our guest speaker, Ms. Susan Maurice. Ms. Maurice was born and raised in Belfast, Ireland, and she acquired a degree in geology from Trinity College, Dublin. She is the founding member of Belize Natural Energy, International Natural Energy, CHX Capital, and XJet Worldwide. Ms. Maurice was most recently awarded President Award for Exemplary Service from the APG. She's continuously recognized for her contribution, including this year, the Denver Business Journal Top Women in Energy. Ms. Maurice recently, her team were awarded the high competitive and prestigious 2017 Global Get Energy Educational Award for the educational model that is at the core of the company. It is my pleasure to welcome Ms. Maurice to the table. Ms. Maurice, over to you.
Thank you very much, Keston, and I appreciate your patience in taking me through the technology here. Although I can't see everybody, I appreciate the opportunity here to be beamed into Trinidad and Tobago and potentially other Caribbean nations and areas around, and share what has been a very successful business and educational model at the core of our company, Belize Natural Energy. And it's relevant today because indeed our title is, I'll just read it out, is "In this time of energy change, how can geoscientists adapt?" And that's probably one of the keys to our company, is that innovation, adaptability and creativity are the cores of our company for the last 13 years. And so we have been able to weather a number of storms, actually. And so I wanted to share that with everybody, so that they too personally can look to themselves. I'm finding I've actually got this slide up first for you all to see, and it's called "Highlighted Throughout the Commonwealth." And I thought it would be just something to read as people were coming into this call, because we were asked to and interviewed by the group in London for the 70th anniversary of the Commonwealth, which Trinidad and Tobago, I believe, are part of the Commonwealth. So is Belize and 50 other countries around the world. And so it's a commemorative volume which highlights what a country is particularly proud of and has become known for sharing. And the BNE educational EDUCO model at the core of the company and our success, and now being shared throughout the country, is what we have won the, and what Keston highlighted there, won the Get Energy Global Award. We actually beat the United States, Canada, the UK, Malaysia, a number of different countries, 50 countries around the world, in not for aid programs. We're talking about sustainability and empowerment. And when we really use and look for that understanding of the word empowerment, that's what gets us to the title today, which is adaptability in this changing energy environment. And the empowerment of ourselves from within is how we can adapt and look at and be aware of our surroundings. And I'm going to use the BNE model as an example. But before we start, I just had a fascinating situation occur this morning. Here, I'm actually speaking to you from Denver, Colorado today. And I have an intern that comes to me. He's not graduated yet, but he represents a group of young people who are getting ready to graduate, or maybe just have, into the energy business and are going, oh dear, what in the world am I going to do? And so what I'm doing and a group of us are doing is setting up groups or committees, and we've called it the Members in Transition, MIT, which is a joint venture between the AAPG and the Society of Petroleum Engineers, and in this case, in the Rocky Mountain region, the RMAG, and a number of other groups of professionals in the energy sector. As you all probably know, many have been laid off. Companies have actually closed, maybe especially here in the United States. And young people, middle-aged, and even older people are looking around. During this COVID time, they have had a lot of time to reflect, to actually contemplate on what they really want out of life. What do they see as their path in life? What are the choices? And for that reflection to be both practical and broad is really how you start looking at yourself for the answers. I'm trying to think. Yes, let me just finish the story of the intern. The intern this morning came in, Mitch his name is, and I asked him, you know, what's the pulse amongst his student friends? And he said, they're actually doing nothing in the business at all. There's no internships, and they're bartenders and various things like that. And he said in many cases, they've almost given up and become fearful sometimes and depressed. And we actually need to make sure that we reach out to people around, not just in the energy industry, but everybody, and make sure that they have and know there are friends, that we're actually on this planet together, and we really are one. So that's the first thing. The second thing, in your associations like the Geological Society, if the younger ones and the older ones can reach out and sort of buddy up, a bit like scuba diving, and you find that symbiotic relationship, that energy of two together, can actually make 202. And that is what we're doing. We've actually been brainstorming about a whole new technology for drilling, underbalanced, and then linking it with others in the industry to create opportunities to do things differently, to bring CO2 out of, for instance, an electrical generation or a cement plant, and bring it back into tertiary recovery in the oil industry, so that we in the oil and gas industry are creating cycles, so that we are actually looking at a responsible approach to the climate, but also to the production of plastics, to the production of lipsticks, and all things that come out of the many wealth of products out of the oil and gas industry. And that has been very exciting. As the young man said, this is stuff he could not learn in a book. And we're getting onto the Zoom calls, where now our things are opening. We're actually having the inventors round here and brainstorming and really utilizing the time to see what are the new ways in the industry, the new energies, the new ways to do things, because quite often necessity is the mother of invention. And so I wanted to share some of those with you. But firstly, I wanted to just take you through the magic story that is BNE. Now, let's see. I wanted to start with this because I wanted to start with you. I think it was actually, it's quite a long time ago, this particular Scientific America came out with a study on our unconscious mind. And the visual for that is the mind or the brain here floating on water. And the piece above the water is the 5 to 10% of our conscious mind. And the very large piece below is, say, 90 to 95% of our unconscious mind, which exerts a profound influence, shaping decisions, molding behavior, and running our lives, as you can see there on the front page of Scientific America. We're learning more and more about the fact that we are only utilizing a tiny part of our capacity. Can you imagine if what we are doing is only representative of 5 to 10%, what could we do with opening our whole mind to a much greater amount of utilage, even 100%? And so I wanted to remind us of this so that we got a picture of what we really want, and that is the fully open, creative, innovative mind. And what does that do for us and for humanity? I just wanted to set, as I'm sure you all know this, it's got a bit of a story about it, as I was a young geologist, and straight out of Trinity, the university in Dublin, I came to the United States, and very soon after that, I was invited to Belize to look at the hydrocarbon potential. You can see the relationship throughout the greater Caribbean basin. There's Trinidad and Tobago versus Belize right over in northern Central America. But I was asked what was the oil potential of Belize. I was, young. So my first reaction was to go to what's a very good library, the Federal Library here in Denver, and go back. And that's the great thing about being a geoscientist. You can time travel, go back through geological time to 100 million years ago plus, Lower Cretaceous, and be that oil molecule in the greater Mexican basin, which actually involved Cuba, Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize. And it was mainly a carbonate platform, not unlike many of the carbonate platforms, say, around the Bahamas today, but it has been a great productive reservoir setting for instance, some of the older discoveries in the Poza Rica Golden Lane Trend in Mexico, for instance, and then closer to Belize in Guatemala in the thrust belt, the Rubel Santos and the Sean fields. The oil tends to be heavier, 14-degree gravity to maybe 24-degree in Guatemala. And wait till you hear what we discovered. But before we go on into some of the technical, I want to tell you about the importance of having met a fellow Belizean. I'm originally Irish, actually, but Mike Usher was a Belizean who actually worked for the big French company, Compagnie de Générale de Géophysique, and was traveling around the world to many locations doing a lot of the surveying for the company. And we met and we had a common bond in that I had not only felt that there was oil in Belize, but I had traveled to Belize and I had actually fallen in love with the people, the openness, the kindness, the generosity of spirit. And both Mike and I wanted together to discover oil, but bring it with and for the people in a very different way. You'd probably, many of you would be familiar with this, but it does point out one thing why I talk about Cuba. Cuba actually was docked right to the east of Belize, and Honduras was right round in the Pacific. So you can see some of the lineament features there, which brought Cuba into place, the Cayman Island Trough, So the Cuban discoveries along especially the northern side added further ammunition to my commitment that I felt that there really was oil in Belize. However, I find that nobody else thought this was the case, really. There were 50 dry holes. Many of the majors had already been in, and the large independents drilled wells and declared it was a no oil area, which I was surprised about, being young and innocent, but I did not take on that program at all. Let's see what's next. There's a homing in. Oops, let's go back. Homing in on Belize. It highlights the oil in Cuba. We've actually discovered 2 fields. The green dot really represents 2 fields there. And then you see the Guatemalan production and a lot of the Mexican production, and quite a bit more just off the map. The Mexican Petroleum Basin, as I've said, to my mind, very much incorporated Belize, and therefore I, again, as a younger geologist, felt that even though there were 50 dry holes, to me that was the reason and the information to go from, not to write off the whole country. The local geology was complicated, structurally very fascinating, with a big thrust belt and transform faults and sinkholes, both on and offshore. In fact, I had the pleasure of traveling to the Blue Hole with Sir Richard Branson at Christmas time, and BNE provided the safety helicopters and the logistics for Jacques Cousteau's grandson and Richard Branson to go down into the Blue Hole, which is the offshore equivalent of one of these cenotes, as they're called in Mexico, Guatemala, and sinkholes. It's now offshore, but of course it is a creation of an onshore phenomenon that shows that where it is away off in the reef in Belize was once onshore, therefore giving us different levels of sea through recent time. Now this is a cartoon sketch, but I must tell you about it. This would be a cartoon sketch generally over our Spanish Lookout field, which was our first discovery. And much to everybody's amazement, I think people still don't believe me, the discovery was in a sandstone. And because everything throughout this whole area is carbonates, but the Maya Mountains have been a buttress, both granite and metamorphic buttress, from which everything swung, the tectonics swung around them. And of course, the rivers eroded them. And those rivers brought the sandstones and the siltstones into an intermingling with the carbonates. And funnily enough, the very first well drilled in Belize was the Yalbak #1 on the Yalbak Hills by Gulf in 1952, the year I was born. And it drilled down into a zone. And a friend of mine, Jean Cornac, framed a statement I made, which was, when this sand cleans up, there'll be a discovery. Now that was 30 years ago, but that's what happened. And it was a series of miracles, because this red bank clay over here is actually a volcanic clastic clay, which plays total havoc with seismic. We only had some rudimentary 2D seismic lines, thank God, because had we had a 3D, we probably wouldn't have drilled the discovery, because it looked like a breached anticline. Far worse than this. It actually looked as if the whole anticline was totally breached and we wouldn't have had a chance. But on the 2D, we could use our imagination, because it wasn't very clear, thanks to the difficulties up in the first 1,000 feet due to the silica-rich volcanic clastics that filled in the pull-apart basin, which was the area we drilled onshore Belize. So maybe it's an example of sometimes you just got to make the decision and go with it. Gather the information and then take that leap of faith. And that's the key to understanding and lining up with our whole mind. Keep that in mind, because it's so true for now looking for that capacity within yourself. Okay, let's try another. Here's Mike Usher. And I'll just read this story. Against all odds, with 500,000 acres in which to choose a single location and finances, we only had raised enough money for basically one shot, maybe a shot and a half. In other words, no use. The impossible happened. A discovery on our very first well. Statistically, it takes between 10 to 15 wildcats before discovery. Sadly, however, Mike Usher had died the year before. I had named the well after him, the Mike Usher #1. And amazingly enough, on the exact anniversary of his death, the 24th of June, which is tomorrow, very auspicious, by the way. This is a very, very lucky period of time. The 24th of June, 2004, Mike passed. Suddenly, he was young in his 50s. And on the 24th of June, 2005, against all odds, on the first well named after Mike, we hit the first Belize oil in a sandstone reservoir. Now there are more than 10 producing wells named in the honor of Mike in the Spanish Lookout field in western Belize. And BNE has become a global beacon for the movement towards a holistic approach to natural energy exploration. And that's what I want to use as an example. In fact, it's a brilliant example for us today of that lineup and creativity within ourselves that makes even the impossible possible. This is the Spanish Lookout oil field. Everybody says it's the most beautiful oil field in the world. It's actually a Mennonite, beautiful agricultural settlement in the middle of Belize. And what we've done is we've done most of the pumps. The nodding donkeys have actually been converted to in-hole pumping mechanisms that are quiet and have no impact on the surrounding area. You can see a drill rig that we're drilling there in that picture, but we work very, very closely with the Mennonite community and the Belizeans, of course. And it really is, in fact, in 2005, it was an absolute saving grace because many countries were heading towards a very difficult financial time, including Belize, and the oil absolutely turned our trajectory upwards. And the oil has been the #1 revenue generator in the country for over 10 years. Now, tourism, which of course Belize is quite famous for tourism, employs more people, but this is a revenue stream straight out of the production. So it's a joint venture, as many countries, of course, in the world, a PSA, between the government and Belize Natural Energy and my own family company, CHX. And that's the partnership going forward. But it's with and for the people and, of course, the investing group, who mainly came from Ireland. Oh, let me just tell you about the investing group, actually. Nobody, all the oil companies told us we were stupid. There was no oil. I remember even walking out of one and bursting into tears because they were particularly rude about how stupid I was. But you know, when you get the feeling, you get a feeling that it is right in there. And we couldn't, Mike and I couldn't leave it down. But it wasn't until we actually realized that, yes, that he knew a lot about the surveying and the exact mathematics there, and I knew and loved geology and the earth and plate tectonics, but neither of us knew about the human mind, the thing that we're working with every single second of every day. And was an obvious gap in our education. And so I looked around and researched for a group that was PhD acclaimed, that could quickly, because I was sort of in a rush for this really, quickly let me know exactly how the human mind and the earth and the time frame actually come together to allow us a greater understanding of the harmony and the role we have in the history and potential of the earth. In fact, as I've said, the educational system that gives unlimited human potential. And by the way, that's where we got our name. It's not Belize energy, it's Belize natural energy, because it's the reference to the creative and natural energy within ourselves. I had done some research myself, and it had taken me back to Socrates and Plato, to the simple phrase, know thyself. But there had been amazing people like Leonardo da Vinci, who had transcended subject barriers, Nelson Mandela, who had seen the end of our apartheid and come and followed his vision, or Gandhi, who had actually visualized the coming together, the independence of India and the British out of India. But no one seemed to have been able to replicate those educational steps for the man, boy, child, girl in the street or even in the jungle. And I was looking for that educational system, and I found it. And Mike and myself and a group of us, and indeed that's the common thread we had with the Irish investors. They didn't know where Belize was. They'd never invested in the energy business, but they had also attended this seminar. So they knew the power of alignment of oneself, the conscious and the unconscious, and the doorway into really the human spirit, the human energy that allows the transcending of limits. So we went along, and then we applied what we knew of our visionary capacity, of our full potential. And that's how we were able to walk to, in 500,000 acres, the right place to drill where the oil is. We've done it a second time in the Never Delay field. So we've got two fields. They're shallow. They're 3,000, 2,500 feet deep at the moment. The basin has probably deeper potential, but at the moment, this is it's actually the gift from God, because there on the 24th of June, that's tomorrow, in 2005, we hit the very first oil discovery in Belize, in the well named after Mike Usher number 1. And you know what we hit? So light, oil so light, 40-degree gravity. It went immediately into the generators without refining, which is very, very lucky, because Belize does not have a refinery. What you're seeing behind, if you can see that picture with me in the blue hat, you're actually seeing a gas plant that takes our natural gas flare down into a process which allows us to provide cooking gas to the local people and not waste it on flaring. We also provide local energy to electricity. So we've been one of the essential services during this locked in time. Okay. My passion when I started out in my career was for geology, but now it's for people. Geologists, you all can make the critical difference. And in fact, I've been to Trinidad, and I stayed in the Upside Down Hotel. I think it was the Hilton. You walk in at the top and go down. And I was fascinated by I think it was a lake of oil in Trinidad, and thinking, I don't know if there are any onshore, because onshore really involves the local people out of necessity. So for instance, we're 99% Belizean, And our trucks, which take the oil, the beautiful 40-degree oil, which we don't use, we use about 25% in Belize, and the other 75% has been exported all around the world. Panama Canal to California to Japan to Rotterdam to Europe to Houston to the Bahamas, everywhere, because this oil, being 40 degrees, is the icing on the cake of all the Mayan crudes, as many of you know. And in fact, I'd love to look and see whether the Trinidad refinery might be part of a joint venture in the future, when I believe you're looking at starting up again, or maybe have. I'd love to hear more about your refinery. Let's see what we say here. Belize's first commercial discovery came in June 2005, when we drilled the Mike Usher #1 in the Spanish Lookout community. And then we drilled Never Delay, about 6 years later. Both fields are located in the margin of the Corozal Basin, which is the greater part of the Mexican basin. So that's, I think we've talked about that. That's one of our nodding donkeys, which most of them have now been transferred to or changed to a pump, semi-submersible pump within the well. Now, what we've become famous for, not just the first discovery in Belize against all odds and a coming together of that alignment of a vision, but we won the Employer of the Year award, the Green Business Award, and most people say, how did you dare enter? But because we are holistic, we are in harmony with the people, with the environment, with the whole balance of life. The Get Energy Global Award, Education Award, we won in 2013, and I've got to say, go onto our website. That's www.belizenaturalenergy.bz, and go to, I think it's called the educational video, and bring your tissue, because it's an example of big, tough, grown men, the drillers, having enough comfort to come to us and say, we want to learn how to read and write. We didn't know, because you don't need to really read and write to drill, but they wanted to be able to interact with their children and homework. And it is it's really the most joyous example. So do check out our website. Of course, the compliance of tax each year. Now, this is the big one, the Get Energy Localization Award in 2017. That we won for the empowerment of the people using the same Educo educational system that has now been made available to the whole country. And for instance, a perfect example was the Chief of Police. He came to us, Chief of Police of the capital of Belize, Belmopan. He came to us and said he wanted to understand the criminal mind, to actually see how to prevent it occurring. He went along to the Educo seminar and understood the power of our mind, came back and got the police cadets and told them exactly how he saw the future of Belize, actually. And within 1 year, in the capital city of Belize, Belmopan, he had reduced crime by 52%. Unheard of. The word got out amongst entrepreneurs. We have entrepreneurs in a number of different industries. One I was thinking about this morning is Elsia, who is down amongst the Mayan community with her cousin Marshall, who works with us. Elsia was taken under the wing of Belize Natural Energy, actually of the employees, and was encouraged to learn about the entrepreneurial spirit and about making different types of not just crafts, but useful and beautiful things in the Mayan community. But she didn't just stop at herself. She taught other, especially young girls, how to be entrepreneurs themselves, and passed it on. And her fame got all the way back to, let's see if we've got a photograph of this. I hope we have. Those are the awards. That's me picking up the Get Energy Award. Let's go on. This is the Energy for Life Awards, and I want to go to the International Princess Diana Award, and I hope we've got a picture. There we go. There's Elsia herself. Very few people in the world have been sandwiched by two handsome princes in London. She was invited by them. She won the Princess Diana Legacy Award, their darling mother, and has gone from strength to strength, sharing this capacity, which she took the steps and learned how to align her mind, see the vision, see the goal already done on the Educo seminar, which is the educational system at the core of our company and throughout the country. That's the winning ticket for winning the Get Energy Award, and actually competing against, it was over 50 countries, big ones like the USA, the UK, Canada, Malaysia. And in winning that, I've got to tell you, that last picture of myself, you can see the delight on my face when I ran up to the stage and practically lifted the director who was giving me the award. And all the countries, 50 countries, were represented in London in a beautiful banquet hall, like sort of Buckingham Palace. And I was overjoyed. Of course, yes, for Belize, for BNE, and for the Educo model, but actually for the fact that Mike and I had wanted to share these steps with the world. And here was a good slice of the world right there, getting and seeing this award. And since then, we've had countries, for instance, the United Arab Emirates have done a big joint venture at the United Nations with us. I hope I've got a picture of that. There we go. This is New York. This is the United Arab Emirates. This is Mr. Ali Nakbi, and this is Josh Stewart, who lives in Dubai, but is one of the BNE directors and orchestrated the joint venture across the world based on this Educo educational model to bring forward the true innate capacity of mankind, of humanity. And so we very much were recognized at the United Nations for two small countries on the other side of the globe, the UAE, Belize, BNE, coming together for and in the interests of humanity. And I just am particularly proud of that photograph, because that sort of says it all, those smiles. This is the BNE Trust. The BNE Trust was thought about by Mike Usher and myself way before we had the discovery. We wanted a flow of revenue to come directly to the people. Yes, in the partnership it goes to the government, but we wanted it to go directly to the people, to, of course, projects, school projects, educational projects, scholarships. We've spent about almost 9 million over the 10, 12 years. But actually what's happening, we're now providing scholarships for young people to actually go along to the same seminar, the Educo seminar, to learn and be that capacity they were born to be. And from that is coming the uprising and the upwelling of the entire nation. It's absolutely magical. Here they are waving at you, the BNE team and family. There's actually myself. I don't know if you can see the blonde, and Patty Usher, the wife of Mike Usher, and Josh Stewart, who is the director, who has orchestrated UAE, BNE and Belize all coming together at the UN, and steps taking place right now. And these are all the BNE people. As I said, 98, 99% Belizean. And as I said, I don't know if anybody would have spotted me right back to the beginning. Let's just see, let's go back. There's the two princes. That was a lovely one. There's all our trophies. When you all come and visit, which we've had the ambassadors. We've had the ambassador from Trinidad Tobago there. and from Guatemala and from Mexico. Actually, the Mexican ambassador, Carlos, is one of our greatest advocates. He invited about 15 different countries and their ambassadors out to our headquarters to see the model in action, because it's particularly great because you feel the innovation and the energy in the people. And that's really what I want to say is, it's not just in Belize. It's actually in every single one of us listening here today and around the world. It's that capacity, that energy, that life force that we are born with. It gets diluted and covered up in different ways, sometimes parents, sometimes teachers, sometimes society and culture itself. But it is there to be uncovered. And I liken it to drilling a wildcat. You drill down through the layers to the treasure. In this case, it's the black gold within the earth. But in the case of the people, it's the treasure of the capacity and the energy. In fact, I'd say that's the real energy business that transcends oil and gas, wind, solar, hydrogen, and all the new ones. It is the key to the evolution of humanity and to the breadth and depth of the adaptability of us. Oh, now I'm right back to that very beginning photograph, which is all those B&E faces. And it's very hard to see mine, but I'm the only one with the blonde, really is pretty gray actually now, hair right there in the middle. And it is definitely one of my greatest joys to be a part of such an amazing company and country, but educational system that is being shared and replicated around the world. And that's what I wanted to share today, because it's in you all. Take the steps to be all you can be. Look at the kids around you and you'll see. I've got a grandchild who's 6, actually she was 7 last week, and she reminds me all the time of her fearlessness, her joie de vivre, her joy, her creativity. That's what's in us all. And that's the adaptability of every geoscientist to make a difference in the world, whether it be going down and finding out what you can actually do with that oil lake there in Trinidad, or actually really do with the refinery, or indeed with the new ideas. Try going to the Forbes article in December last year. Forbes, my name, Susan Morrison, Belize, and I coined a phrase, think outside the barrel. If you think of a wheat farmer, he can sell the wheat, or he can sell flour and get a bit more money, or he can sell bread and get some more money, or he can sell sandwiches. Well, it's the same with any commodity. Why sell it in the barrel always? Yes, sometimes it's a good idea, but what about bringing it to electricity or to cooking gas? Or in the Forbes article, they loved when I said, think outside the barrel. And then I said, how many lipsticks are in a barrel of oil? That's one for you girls. It's because we've actually found paraffin in our oil, and paraffin is the key substrate for Vaseline petroleum jelly and lipsticks and hair gels for the boys. Thousands and thousands of commodities that we can bring to our local communities and add creativity and wealth and downstream marketing to the very areas that we live in, just by tapping into our own energy and creativity. And that maybe is the real understanding of the commonwealth, because it is a common wealth within us all. And thank you very, very much. I don't know if there are any questions, but I'm delighted if anybody reaches out and wants to know more about the story, wants to come to Belize, or wants to know more about the educational system, the Aduco educational system, or all of the above, I would be delighted, and I'm always delighted to share. Thank you, Trinidad and Tobago. I've been to Tobago too.
Thank you very much, Susan. Very interesting talk, very inspirational talk. I must admit, I'm very overwhelmed with the success that you have. I'm sorry about your friend, Mr. Mike, I believe his name is, but great story in the end. Unfortunately, we are unable to hear the other participants, but I do have one question from an anonymous person. They asked how many barrels of oil per day did your Michael produce?
We're still producing. The height was 5,000 barrels a day. We're now below and have actually cut our production in half due to the pricing structure on purpose, because we're choosing to store it in the ground at the moment. We're only selling the local oil. And when we, let's just say, when the time is right, we will either produce, as I'm talking about, more from our oil locally and sell more outside. So the height was probably about 5,000 barrels a day. So it wasn't so much that it spoilt us. And that was quite important. We still needed to look to that energy within. And in Belize, I think we call it mining. There's a visionary leader in energy mining the potential within the people. So that's the key.
Okay. I have another question from another person. They ask, what is the demographic of Belizean geoscientists currently? Most trained in country, and what specialized job are there for geoscientists outside of energy?
Okay. Firstly, there are very few local geologists, and I think some of them, in fact, many have looked to Trinidad Tobago as, of course, the oil grandfather of the whole region, and have gone to school there or up in Jamaica. We are looking at a different type of educational system in B&E, one where it's experiential, because we're finding that both today with my intern, for instance, he was learning stuff he could never have learned in a book. We want to have some type of like a technical college where the geologists would come in and shadow the geologists, but they'd also shadow the drillers or the marketing people or the transportation people or various people, and have a new style of education which actually allows, firstly, the mind to remain open and the experience to be the key that allows you to find your path. You know, do you want to be a part of the greater energy mix going forward, the energy change, as was my title? So at the moment, we actually have very little in the area of just, let's just say, straight geology. One of the areas that another area I'd like to get involved in is geological field trips, because, and again, you all might like to come for this, not only do we have the business model that is key, but as life would have it, it's just wonderful how these line up. In a place called Placencia, we have a sand spit. If you kneel down and pick up that sand and then get our reservoir sand and open it, they're both from the Maya Mountains. There's just 100 million years difference. And it's fascinating because that's how geologists and geoscientists learn. They look at today's environment and it allows them more easily to see in 3D and time travel back down to the lower Cretaceous to visualize what those rivers were like coming off the ancient Maya Mountains. So Belize has a huge capacity, not only to share very much the Aduco business educational model at the core of the success, but also the settings of the geology to allow people to really visualize in 2 and 3D.
Okay, that's great. Another question, well, more of a bit of some history from one of our directors, Dr. Adrian Tuitt. He said really good stuff, Miss Morris. Trinidad first oil discovery was in the 1860s. Country like Belize and Guyana are relatively new to having oil. Newfoundland wealth in developing countries has a tendency of breeding corruption. In light of Belize's social development model, what advice would you have for countries that find oil?
That's a really important question, and I couldn't hear who asked it, but I think that person must really be looking ahead to find out how do we make sure that as a nation, as humans, we come together in the right way to bring forward the abundance and wealth for all, because it's only when there is an imbalance that corruption occurs. But when you have people actually walking the talk of their own energy and being all they can be, there isn't this out of sync situation, this them and us. It's actually that is the key number one answer for division. Division, whether it be political division, you know, even in the United States, you get Republicans versus Democrats, the color division. I'm from Belfast. We got the religious division. That is all stopping us from being the unity, the oneness that we were born to be. That's when you get the unconscious and the conscious lining up and the doorway into the spirit not just of yourself, but it's the spirit of all. And so I know it's a very unusual answer to that question, but if we could, and we will, we have to, this virus has given it a chance to say, why are we on this planet? What is this about? How can we really be the change that is needed now? And I would say the question is very, very timely, because it is a solution to the, not just the inequities that we see, which is true, but the division within ourselves. That has to come first. The understanding of that alignment within oneself, know thyself, back to Socrates, go along and follow those steps. And if you want to fast track it for your nation or country, you know, ring me or email me and I'll tell you exactly how Mike and I did it way back in 2002, and then shared it with the nation of Belize and now the UAE. So it's a brilliant question and it's got a solution. It is getting to the grips of ourselves, which creates the division in the first place, to bring that oneness and unity to ourselves and all.
That is so true. Just to confirm, the person that asked the question was one of our board of director, Dr. Adrian Tuitt.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a name, Ms. Morris?
Adrian Tuitt.
Yes, that's correct. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
I have a few more questions. I know we are pressed for time. I have someone asking a question. Would you advise a young individual to seek out job opportunities in the present job market?
Of course. There are many, for instance, adaptation opportunities, and we've been looking at them recently here in, for instance, geothermal. That's very applicable for the geologist. Same drilling, except they're drilling for hot water, really, or even putting water down into a heat zone and bringing it up. Same for the petroleum engineer. But also, I would say, take the time, whoever that young geoscientist or engineer is, to actually go in and reflect on your own being, your own capacity, your own spirit. And sometimes that brings out the entrepreneurial spirit, which is latent inside us all, actually. It's just covered up by fear, doubt, various mindsets that cover this. And what you want to be able to do is take some steps into the unknown. Jump out, have a go. Find a way to get to Belize and come and see B&E. You know what I mean? It may sound rash, but we need to jump out of the box, think outside the barrel, think outside the box, and be outside the box.
I may actually take you up on that offer. It sounds really interesting. And yes, we need to think outside the box. While we are on the topic of Belize, I have a very interesting question here from someone, again, anonymous. It said from Belfast to Belmopan, were there any challenges in adapting to Belize way of life?
I'm sure there could have been, but I was so in love and enamored with the people that people ask me, how did I keep going for 17 years? Mike and I searched for 17 years, and I slept on floors. I had no money. But I loved it all because it was a journey and adventure. That's the adventure spirit. Funnily enough, I don't even know whether to say this, but I will, because it's an example of the mind. I remember when I first went down to Belize, when I was a young geologist, somebody asked me whether there was any bias against me because I'm particularly white, being Irish. And I looked at them and I said, don't be daft, everybody's, I said, everybody's white. And of course I went down the next time and found out, because I'd been asked the question, that I hadn't seen any color. My eyes didn't see it. And it was because my heart didn't come from that place. And I think that's what we need today, not to see religious differences, because they're not in the children. That was like Belfast, not to see color differences, because they're not in the children. We're not born with it. We're born in the likeness of God. Not to be divided, not to be separated by culture, by money, by bigotry, by anything. And that's, in a way, I'm quite glad you asked me the question, because it reminded me of that, the importance of the clear, loving, open mind of light and energy that we were born with. And that's where we have the capacity right now to come back to.
This is so true. I have a final question, and then I will close off. This is from Miss Trushell Fortune, one of our members. She asks, are there additional potential for exploration for BNC in Belize?
I think she does. Does she mean oil and gas exploration?
I believe so.
Yeah. I would say there's always additional potential for exploration almost anywhere, whether it be geothermal, oil and gas, or hydrogen, or CO2, or whatever. Today it's exciting because we are actually being asked to be creative, to open ourselves to our capacity. That's the challenge. And so I would say to the questioner that whether it's Belize or Bermuda or Belfast, it actually doesn't really matter. It's where you connect with, where your passion finds that you can make a difference to yourself and your community in this world. That's the area of exploration. And it's an exploration within oneself, first and foremostly. That's how the holistic model moves forward for the greater potential of humanity.
I can certainly agree with you. I can also sense and hear the passion in your voice, and really applaud your journey.
Thank you.
As in this field. I know those who are listening are also inspired by the path that you went down and the success at the end. So again, in closing, on behalf of the GSTT, the Geological Society of Trinidad and Tobago, we would like to thank you very much, Susan Morris, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to share your life story and journey with us and with young geoscientists and geologists who are listening within our membership and within the public. We hope to probably come across the Belize and have a field trip at, of your company.
Of course.
Something we could probably look at in the future once this COVID-19 is cleared and vaccines are out.
Yeah.
But what I can say is, well done. I applaud you. I don't know if you have anything you want to say in closing before we depart always for now.
Thank you very much, Keston, and all the listeners. And what I would ask is share the story, because that will be sharing the spirit and the capacity within everybody else. This is not just a ripple effect. This has got to be a waterfall effect around the world, because the time is now. Thank you.